And all right, we're recording. Yeah, welcome to Align Online Week 4, aka the series in which we keep track of how fast my hair grows from week to week. We'll see where it ends by the end of the series. Yeah, today's or this session is road mapping the future of Align. So this is sort of a meta session, and hopefully you find this inside look into our process and our strategy insightful. But first, let's introduce ourselves. So Michaela and I are the co-executive directors of Align. That's the Alliance for the Low Income and First Generation Narrative. Michaela, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Michaela Moses, and like Chris said, I'm one of the co-executive directors of Align. I officially joined the team around this time last year after I organized Align 2019 at my alma mater, University of Virginia. And I've been a part of the team ever since then, and I'm really excited to see where things go in the future. Right now, I live on the eastern shore of Maryland, which is that little peninsula part that everyone forgets about that kind of like jets out into the ocean. And I am a case manager in Worcester County, Maryland. So that's me.
Yep. And so I'm Chris Lamb. I'm one of the co-founders of Align and co-executive director along with Michaela. I graduated in 2017 from Columbia University and from Georgetown University. I was part of a dual bachelor's program. And so for the last 3 years, I've been, working on Align. So we've had a conference every year since I started it in 2017. And this fall I'll be starting a PhD program at University of Florida in astronomy. So thanks, Joseph. So all right, so let me share the screen, and then we'll get right on to the presentation. Can people see my screen? Okay. We're gonna have to blur out the emails that popped up for a second there, but let's get right on start. All right, cool. So welcome to the Alliance for the Low Income and First Generation Narrative online. Do you want to get us started, Michaela?
Sure. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about our organization, about how we kind of view the first gen low income experience, this national community that's forming. And then we want to get into a little bit about where Chris and I see Align heading in proximity to the FGLI movement. Then we want to talk a little bit more about hosting Align. Like Chris said, we have had a conference every year since the first Align, and it's been at a different school every year, and it's a really valuable experience hosting. Sorry, I just dropped my chopstick. So we'll talk a little bit more about that and how you can join us if hosting Align isn't for you. So get started.
All right, so hopefully the audio, let me know if the audio doesn't work, but this is a quick promo video to actually, okay, so let's talk about the schools on this screen. So these are the schools who have in the past 4 weeks participated in an Align Online session. So this Align Online happened because of the situation that the entire world is in right now. So this was our pivot to still give content that students cared about in these times. So our in-person content, we've been trying to just wrap that up in a virtual setting, and then also have it be accessible to people after the fact on YouTube. So we're still experimenting, but we found that we've been able to reach way more schools. We're no longer constrained by geography. We're just constrained by who's in whose social networks, right? So as you can see on either side, here are some of the schools who have participated in the past few weeks. But we also, I'm sorry, these are schools who have, so some of these schools have not seen an Align conference in person. So we just want to give you guys an idea of the vibe um, at an actual Align in-person conference.
Chris, is your audio on?
It is for me, but not for you guys, apparently.
Not for us. Okay.
Well, um, we didn't have a plan B.
There's a way to do it. If you stop the screen share, go back to screen share. On the bottom left, before you choose the screen, there's a little tick box that says share computer sound.
In advanced sharing options?
No, just when you click share screen.
Okay.
Left of that, I missed it.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. That was my reaction when the first time I was like, oh.
You are so right. Please install the Zoom audio device.
Oh. Well, we should have prepared. Sorry.
All right, cool. I think we can do this now. We've got more people join, I think, meanwhile. All right, cool. Can you guys hear it now?
My experiences at this conference have been honestly life-changing. The people that I've met, the stories that I've heard, and the connections that I've made have just been beyond anything that I ever expected.
Align and conquer, we're stronger together.
Align and conquer, we're stronger together.
Align and conquer, we're stronger together.
Align and conquer,
We are stronger
Together.
Align and conquer, we are stronger together.
All right, so that's remains the single greatest capture of Align, and we'll probably never be able to capture in that high def again. But so just extrapolate it into the future. That's an idea of what you'll experience if you attend a future Align conference, and possibly a look at what you guys could be putting on yourselves at your own schools. So we want that to be in the back of your mind as well. So this is the still nascent history of Align. We started in 2017 at Barnard College. So that was the first year we had that we actually had a conference, but Align really truly started 2 years prior to that at Georgetown University, where I was when I was a junior. So me and three other students came up independently with the idea of a summit, a local summit, to gather together staff, admin, and students to talk about first-gen low-income experiences, and also initiatives that that had cross-cutting applications, to all the schools in the area. And so we tried to make that happen. We couldn't quite make it happen, but we tried again. And so in 2017, that was our first conference. We had around 90 people from about 15 different schools. And so the following year, we had our second conference at the George Washington University, where we had, I think, 130 people from around 20 schools, and then UVA last year with about 150 people from 25 different schools. And so, each conference has had its own theme. GW's conference was, I think, the theme really centered around the student narrative. The 2019 conference at UVA centered around on research and applying that research to the student experience. 2020, it was, it's going to be an asterisk for not just Align, but for really anybody who's putting on events this year. We originally were going to have it at Virginia Commonwealth University and the University of Richmond, jointly hosted. But unfortunately, we've had to cancel the conference and put on an online limited webinar series instead. So we're still, like I said, experimenting, and we're using this opportunity to also have some engagement with people who would normally not be able to come to our conference because they're just like too far away from where we're hosted or for other reasons. So this session is an example of that. We really want your feedback on, and you'll see later in these slides on where we're headed, and what you want to see at future Aligns. So 2021, like I said, keep it in the back of your mind. We want to talk to you if you're interested in hosting. Let's carry on and talk. Let's walk it back. Michaela, do you want to take this one?
So obviously, like Chris said, we are talking about a first-gen low-income partnership, and we just want to talk a little bit about what those words mean, what they mean to us. So generally speaking, a first-gen student is someone who neither parent has received a 4-year or a bachelor degree. But there's no real official definition. Every school can have their own definition of who, is qualifying as a first-gen student. And a low-income student is generally a student who is eligible for the Pell Grant. And the Pell Grant is a subsidy that's provided by the federal government for, again, qualifying low-income students. It's based on household size, income, stuff like that. But here at Align, we encourage self-identification, meaning that, you know yourself, your circumstances better than anyone else can. And for example, you can have a parent who has received a 4-year degree, but you didn't live with that parent. You have no idea, you can't rely on that experience, that parent, to help you work through college. So, you could still say, well, I'm a first-gen student. And, there are other circumstances, for example, like students whose parents might be high income, might be high earning, but again, they have no contact with their parents. For some reason, their parents, will not, support their education. So they're applying for everything on their own. They're basing everything off their own income, and they can say, okay, I'm a low income student. So again, here at Align, we encourage self-identification. And with that, we want to cast our net as wide as we can. And we want the first-gen narrative to include as many first-gen students as possible, not just people who are necessarily qualifying under these definitions, these institutional definitions.
That's right. Definitionally, FGLI can be limiting versus functionally FGLI, and we want to capture that as well. So our mission involves 3 main pillars, right? Like what you see is, our face, our brand is, we do conferences, and lately we put on programming, but behind the scenes we have I guess secondary and tertiary missions that are connected to this, to these conferences. We want to build community, and we want to expand the orbit of the narrative around the first-gen low-income experience to include more schools and more regions of the United States. You've seen the narrative has been centered, especially in the last 5 years, at the national media level, on the Ivy League schools or elite institutions in the Northeast United States and maybe out in California, but that's it, right? So we want to move, and you can see in the in the way you'll see a slide or a picture of this later. Our trajectory of our conferences, we want it to follow we want it to follow that vision. We want to move, southward and westward. We want to include, you know, two-year institutions. I'm talking ahead, but you'll see a more comprehensive list of our of our visions for the future. But Michaela, do you want to fill in on anything here?
I think you got it. Basically, we want to build our own community of first-gen low-income students, people that we call aligners. We want you guys to, rely on us for stuff, but we also want to help you build community at your schools, kind of like what Flip National does. And we want to be there for you to help you foster this same sense of community back at your school, because we know it's very important to feel supported. So
yeah, and I guess the last thing I want to add is we want one of our goals is to build capacity among students for self-advocacy, but also at the same time, like there's a balance, right, between enabling students to advocate for themselves and also shaping the institution so that it's more amenable for student success, like without the need for students, staging sit-ins and organizing, food pantries and things like that. There's a short term, right? We need to address issues at a less systemic level, but we also need to address issues at a systemic level. And so we try to tackle both. We're a tiny organization, and that's where we want to create partnerships with other organizations, and also with your individual schools. We want to see repeat attendees. So speaking of the attendees, here's a look at what happens when you come to Align and you take it back home. We don't want people to come for one weekend and be inspired and then act as if it never happened. We want Align to be on your mind more than just 1 out of 52 weeks per year. So I guess moving left to right. So one of the UVA, Michaela, you want to take UVA?
Sure. So starting with UVA, we had UVA, we had Align there in 2019, and we're by no means trying to take any all credit for things that are coming out of these universities, but coming from UVA, these types of things were not on people's minds. We're not generally on people's minds, or not on the higher ups' minds before we pushed the first gen, the low income narrative. And one of the things that came out of Align was we had a workshop on food insecurity, and it was a great presentation, and everyone came out of it realizing that food insecurity is a huge problem on college campuses, not just and especially elite universities, quote unquote elite universities like the University of Virginia, and wealthy universities like the University of Virginia. It's still a problem, and it's oftentimes ignored. But we came out of it and were able to expand an existing food pantry at UVA and establish more, and also centralize the locations more, because as we know, accessibility is always an issue. So if you have to travel 20 minutes off campus to get to a food pantry, then you probably just won't go. So that's one of the great things, food pantry, and there are other things that we'll talk about too. Moving on to what organizations.
So so let's talk about NYU. So NYU has a Flip National chapter. Shout out Chris Sinclair. But and he can perhaps talk a little bit more about it. But so a lot of community building happens at Align, right? We talked about that in the last slide. Like people get closer together. You spend an entire weekend together, and often these are small maybe like they're not quite official clubs yet, but these are students who identify as first and low income, who, you know, might hang out together back on campus. But this is like a weekend of consciousness raising and community building, and you come back and you take that momentum. You see several schools students either uh, quicken the pace at which they were establishing their student organizations, or outright started student organizations because they were inspired by not only, you know, the conference around them, but more importantly, their peers from their own schools, realizing that, you know, this is something that I want to make in my own home institution. Um, so yeah, so that's another thing. So student-led organizations, also program innovation. So like so that on one side you've got student initiatives, but also institutional initiatives. So Catholic University of America uh, went to Align, I believe it was in 2018 at George Washington University. Seems to make sense because DC. They certainly were there in 2019 at UVA.
Yeah.
But either way, their orientation Take Flight. Yeah, their orientation. It was a bridge program, right, from high school to freshman year of college. If anybody from Catholic University hears this and I'm wrong, please let us know in the comments below. But the so you know, seeing students and at the institutional level, like staff and admin, starting things up because they're inspired by Align is heartening. And back to UVA, Michaela.
Yep. And so a lot of students also, you might be at a school or a university that just isn't ready for a student organization yet. There's not that level of consciousness on campus. But there are a lot of schools or people that will leave Align and then just go home and literally kind of advocate by themselves. They're not necessarily looking to even start an organization. They might be on their way out, but they start, you know, becoming elected officials. They start volunteering, organizing. And an example is Ali Bersacchio. She was the co-director of Align 2019 at UVA. She won her election that year to become the student council president, and used her time there to advocate for first-gen and low-income students. She was one of the pivotal figures in establishing that food pantry at UVA and centralizing its location. And yep, just like Chris and Claire said in the comments, she is a Flip National Fellow, so she's part of the Flip National Alliance there. And we're so lucky to have her on our team. She just graduated from UVA, so congrats to her.
Yeah. All right. So we want to, yes, here's our big shot at the end of the UVA conference last year. We want to take a little moment to poll you guys, ask you a few questions, and just get a feel for like who's in the room. This is an anonymous poll. Feel free to answer however many questions you want. So you'll be getting the poll now.
I'll read them out loud. So people, for the benefit of people who are watching this later, will they be able to see it or no?
Say that again?
Will they be able to see it like after?
On the screen?
Yeah.
I
think so. I'll still read it.
Yeah.
So the first question is, do you identify as first gen and or low income? And you can choose, you should be able to select multiple there, right? And the second question, I or someone I know has experienced food and or housing insecurity within the past 3 months. The third question, I've had to do financial aid forms for myself or my siblings with little or no assistance from my parents. Question 4, I feel uncomfortable approaching my professors and or advisors. Question 5, you can only watch shows on one platform. Which is it going to be? Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, why? Or Disney Plus. And then finally, our last question is, do you have a first gen student community at your school?
So poll results are in. with a very limited sample, but so we've got 4 people out of 5 out of 6 identifying as first gen and 4 out of 6 as low income.
I'm still getting results.
Nice. Okay, yeah, still coming in. So 5 out of 7 and 4 out of 7. 6 out of actually, can you guys see the poll results? Okay. Well, I'll
Yeah, that's why you have to hit end. There you go.
okay, cool, nice. So 6 out of 7 has or knows somebody who has experienced food or housing insecurity within the past 3 months.
Wow.
5 out of 7 have had to do financial aid forms for themselves or their siblings with little or no assistance from their parents. 4 out of 7 have felt uncomfortable approaching their professors or advisors. Disney Plus with the surprise 2 out of 7. Hulu with 1 out of 7. Netflix with 4 out of 7.
Chris, how can you put Apple TV and then in parentheses why? You definitely don't have Apple TV. You just picked a streaming platform like last month.
This is going to be on the internet. I don't need you to put me on blast.
You put Apple TV on blast for no reason.
I don't even know what's on there.
Exactly. It could be some fire. I don't know either. So don't roast me if I'm wrong. But
and then, do you have a first-gen student community at your school? 5 out of 7 say yes, but 2 out of 7 say no. So let's revisit 5 and 6.
I mean,
so
this is not sponsored by Apple TV.
This is most definitely not sponsored by Apple TV. All right, I'm gonna end the poll, and yeah, let's take a detour and talk about who has why did that one person say Hulu? Who's Hulu?
Chris, you said it was anonymous. You're forcing people to reveal.
Okay, no. No, I have Hulu. That's why I want to know. I don't have Netflix. I have Hulu because I'm watching Atlanta, and Atlanta's fire, and you should watch it too. Mm-hmm. So, all right, Carl. Respect.
Carl says that who's the one that he watches the most, and he doesn't have Netflix, even though Netflix has more stuff. You see, we had Hulu, and my boyfriend and I are moving, or in the process of moving, and so we had Hulu Live, but now we didn't have cable at all, or regular cable, I guess. I don't really know the difference, but now he's saying that Hulu Live is too expensive, it's too slow, it's lame, and that we should just get regular cable. So, thoughts on that?
Carl said Netflix put 13th on YouTube, so maybe watch that.
I've seen that. That's a good movie. Yeah. Or documentary, not really a movie.
All right. Well, actually, we'll talk about student organizations closer to the end of the presentation. So let's hop back on the train. Sorry for the interruption.
Tiger King.
Oh, Tiger King and Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, Netflix just for Tiger King right now. If you're gonna binge anything right now, then you just need to. That's just the one thing you need to binge. Trust me there.
All right. So I'd mentioned our southward and westward trajectory. Granted, our sample size is 3. So there's not saying a pattern. There's a pattern there is slightly disingenuous, but we're trying to move south of Virginia and to the west, and so that's that's an important goal for us, right? Because as we move conferences out in that direction, we'll be able to capture more schools, right? It'll be easier for schools in the South and the Midwest to come to aligned conferences, especially when it's the first time and it's harder to convince your administration, to provide funding for travel and lodging and all those things. So that's one of our big goals looking into the future. Another big goal is to cater more intentionally, more explicitly to two-year colleges. Like two-year colleges, community colleges don't get the credit they deserve for having spent decades, serving first and low-income students. Most first and low-income students go to two-year colleges and public institutions, broadly, and so the ironically the credit has been shifted on the other side of the spectrum. So, but we want so we want your feedback. If you're watching this later, let us know what programming is particularly relevant to you as a student or a staff or faculty or admin from a two-year college. Another thing that we're trying to do in the future is, and we're actively working on it, is building bridges with professional organizations and foundations. Like our biggest partner right now is Flip National. They gave us their Zoom account for the last few weeks. We finally got one ourselves, like yesterday, literally yesterday. That's just hopefully the beginning, right? So we're trying to I think one thing that I've observed is that there seems to be a gap between advocacy on the student end and advocacy on the professional, like staff admin end, and so we want to build bridges between those two movements, which are parallel, moving towards the same goal, right? Ensuring the success of first and low income students in college, but often both sides don't really know what the other side's doing. So we want to, so if you're hearing this later and you're involved in an organization that we haven't heard about that's doing work that's similar to ours, like, please reach out. So a fourth goal is creating an independent fund. We are beholden, we've been beholden to funding from the school who's hosting our conference each of the past years that we've hosted it, right? Because the school is technically, letting us use their space, quote unquote, for free. And so, being beholden for money means that, sometimes there's not a lot of creative license. And we've largely haven't had problems to that end, but it's still a direction that we want to take so that we have total, or at least, a lot more agency than we currently have. And then also, very crucially, we want to grow our team and choose our next host. We did that very recently by adding Joseph Mendoza to our team as our outreach coordinator. But if you're a student, or a recent graduate, come talk to us, and we'll see if you have the skills and the wherewithal to help us out, and we'd love to have you on our team. To that, in the same vein, we also, if you're a student or a recent graduate who's still involved in university, or staff, admin, or faculty, or whoever who's interested in hosting a line at your school, please reach out to us. We want to start planning as early as possible to make sure Align 2021 is a hit. So yeah, this is something that we particularly want your feedback on, right? Because this is the strategic direction of Align. We want to know if people tend to agree with this. Is there something slightly different that we should be headed towards? What are your thoughts? I want to, I guess, pause here and solicit any feedback if there is.
Where'd the chat go? There was comments.
Yeah. Daniel Barkowitz from Valencia College said, at my two-year school, even though Pell covers the full cost of tuition for the year, students still struggle with living expenses and the balance of work, life, and school. We know that over half of our students face housing insecurity, and nearly a third have very low food security. Community college students rather face the same issues and need the same agency. Yeah, right on.
And right before that, Chris Sinclair mentioned that he transferred to Columbia from community college. So he says he's here for the two-year college narratives. Anybody else? Community college? I know
Yeah,
just
I think the 2-year college narratives should definitely be included.
Anyone else have any thoughts about any of the goals we mentioned? We talked about the community colleges. We talked about the geographic kind of expansion westward and southern, just out of the Northeast.
Talked about having independent funds, outside organization partnerships.
I guess I'll voice this. Have you looked into the college access and foundation networks at all? So I'm thinking, like, for example, NCAN, which is the National College Attainment Network. They're very focused on college attainment, and they're part of the Better Make Room initiative, which was Michelle Obama's initiative,
Yeah.
and the Reach Higher initiative, and those pieces. So NCAN has become sort of a national advocate for college access, and I think they'd be very interested in sort of talking with you about a student-led event. They tend to represent the interests more of business and philanthropy and institutions. So, your voice is missing in that conversation. So I think that's one area. The other is, foundational support like Helios and Gates and, the sort of the typical funders who are out in heavy spaces in higher ed. And in what way can they help provide some independent funding for you as an organization to help move you forward?
Yeah, that's really good advice. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, yes. And Carl said that finding institutional support might be particularly difficult this year. There's a lot of concern about enrollment and funding in higher ed because of COVID. That's true, very true. And hopefully, trying to be an optimist, on the flip side of that, there's also hopefully going to be some momentum about conversations for first gen and low income students. So I have seen, at least some national stories about low income students and how they're kind of being almost like erased and forgotten right now, because I think there's a lot of people upset, first of all, at the government, because a lot of college students aren't getting stimulus checks, and then there's also a lot of frustration at institutions because they feel like they're getting kicked out and they feel like they're kind of like disposable. So I definitely agree. There's going to be a lot of concerns because obviously we're going to live post COVID-19, but just hopefully there's going to be the flip side of that is now that all of these things are exposed almost and in the open, that people are willing to reach out and help.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that we might have to adapt some more or continue adapting, right, for 2021. Like whether it's, so like the worst case, the pathological case is that we just have another virtual session if nobody can host us because things are just so uncertain, right? There's a question of funding, but there's also a question of space. There's a question of travel, and if there's going to be a second wave in the fall, how long is it going to last? Will it last through the winter and the spring and all that stuff, right? So, yeah. Even if we're able to put on a physical conference, we might have to scale it back, do a very like bare bones, no frills conference, maybe do regional summits. These are some. We're now invoking some conversations Michaela and I have privately had about like how do we how do we cater to more people? You know, we had trouble accommodating people who wanted to attend this year's conference, like prior to this whole COVID-19 thing. You know, we rejected as many people as we accepted into our conference, 175 out of 350. And this was with no active outreach on our end. This was just inbound requests to attend our conference. So we know Alliance, you know, for once, this is one thing that we're comfortable in, the demand for Align. So how do we address that? Do we, you know, spin off regional summits or conferences? Do we put on virtual programming like this to make it more accessible to people, you know, outside of who are, you know, too far away or whatever? So yeah, so these are conversations that Michaela and I continue to have. That, you know, we would love your feedback now or later after the fact. You know, this is a conversation that I think will be better if, you know, lots of people from the community are involved. Yeah. Okay. So let's hop back on the train.
Mm-hmm.
There's really one last thing we want to talk about. So we solicited feedback. Well, we gave you an overview of our strategic plan, and we solicited feedback on that. We appreciate that. But now we want to get on a more tactical level. You know, on an individual Align conference, what do you want to see? So this is, Michaela, do you want to take this hosting Align slide?
Yeah. So hosting Align, there's a lot of reasons to host Align, but the primary reason is to increase class and first-gen consciousness at your institution. At UVA, for those of you who don't know, it's a large school. It's a public institution, but it's a very, very wealthy institution. Their endowment is something like $8 billion. The majority of people that go there are upper middle class to wealthy. And I'm sure there's a lot of you that can maybe relate to that, having attended similar schools. But there's also about, I think, maybe 10% of students that are first gen, and an even smaller percentage that are first gen low income. But when you're put in an environment, you know, that is maybe not as, I don't know, understanding of class differences and just wealth disparity, then you might feel out of place. And I'm sure, again, that that's something that we can all relate to. And there was really no conversation about being first gen. There was really no conversation about being low income. But Align changed that. And even though there were people that were willing to support this mission, it wasn't until it was put out in the open for everyone to see that they had the ability to, you know, find this community. So one of the things that came out of Align 2019 was a Flip National chapter at UVA. And I was really, even though, you know, I graduated almost right, I guess, before/after, while it was being created, it's really exciting to see that community build at my school and have them host events and welcome new students. And I really think that that student community is what's going to kind of push the administration to be more friendly, more accepting of innovations that will help first-gen low-income students. So with that too, you also get to define, help define issues affecting students nationally and shape the FGLI movement. Really, the experience is what you make of it. At UVA, we took the initiative to create our own report where we came up with our own recommendations about what we thought our administration should do and what we thought nationally, what other institutions could do to support first-gen low-income students. We, like Chris said, our focus was research, and we focused a lot on data that we could find. And we literally just made basically a list of grievances and had data that backed it up. And we talked about it in meetings, and a lot of administrators read it and they thought that I mean, I guess I don't really know what they thought, but a lot of people told us that, they used it when they were in their staff meetings, and they said, well, this is, the student voice, this is what they want. So helping to find issues both at your school and nationally is really great. But this experience is a long process. You're literally planning a entire conference for, however many hundred people. And you have to be a very strong student leader to handle that. So we're generally looking for upperclassmen who don't have too many commitments going on. You definitely don't want to be, already tied to another club. And sorry, I'm like reading the chat too. You don't want to be, you don't want to stretch yourself thin with this. And we're looking for people who are not only committed to this conference, but are committed to the mission, committed to first-gen low-income advocacy and inclusivity in higher ed. So, Chris, what did I miss?
Oh, you got it. I mean, yeah, Align is organizing Align is a very hard process. And it takes its toll on you. And so like we try to be there for you, like via like Michaela and I, we
are there. We don't try. We are there.
We are, yeah, we are there for you. But there's things like in your own, like there's so a lot of what we'll do is we'll cover outreach for you. That's one of the main things that we do. So because we have our historical network of attendees from past conferences, and our organizational partners, and we'll continue generating those. And so I think we're situated probably best to handle that. And we also have now 4 years of experience of conference organizing experience, handling logistics like food, lodging, travel, speaker fees, reimbursements, a lot of the things that you might not think about until you start sitting down and sketching out what do I need to do to make this thing happen. And we also have like a growing closet of programming ideas. Every year we put on something that's a little bit different than what we had in the past. And so, we have an idea of what the needs and wants and interests are of students at the national level, and also historically as well. But at the same time, you guys are on the ground. You see your context at your school. So what are the quirks that you need to work around, and so you guys are the experts there, and also like we want you to shape the conference into what you want it to be. No conference should be exactly the same as it was before, and so we want your personality to be stamped onto that conference. We want you to be proud of your conference. So let's pretend that we're all organizing our own conferences. With a little activity, design your own alliance. So we'll break out into rooms, maybe just 2 rooms, and So ground rules is do not charge your students. I think that goes without saying, and direct your content to first gen and low income students. There are a lot of conferences out there that are really good, right? Like part of like NASPA's Center for First Generation Student Success, and in other conferences, NCAM probably has a conference. I don't know, Daniel, but those tend to target a different audience, right? Staff and admin, faculty who support first and low income students. So target your content to students themselves. So those are ground rules, but some additional suggestions. Focus on the content, but also think about your structure. Like, will there be time for people to decompress? That was actually major feedback for I think 2 of our past conferences. You don't want people to be like running to programming 100% of the time. Also note that we don't want you to design an entire conference in the span of 10 minutes, but just any considerations that you can think of will be, good to have for you, but also for us, especially when we come back and share. Think also about how you'll raise your money. Like, are you going to be in an institution that's just loaded in cash with an endowment of like $10 billion, or are you going to be in a more modest institution where you're going to have to be creative about raising money but also cost savings? How you handle the inexorable increase in demand from the schools. Every year more and more schools want to come to Align. How you handle that, and how you put, I think this is most important, how you put your own stamp, your own brand onto this conference. So I'm going to once again stop share, and let's break out. Daniel, before we break out, Daniel from Valencia says, curious if you have looked at Trellis and their student financial wellness surveys. Perhaps another connection point. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right. So rooms have been open.
Helping to plan out conferences myself. So we've helped with the line, we've helped with the IVG conference, a lot of different conferences, and I've also attended a lot of conferences. In fact, if I think about it, I may hold the record, and I may hold the record for most conferences attended because I've been to like 15 of them. So I don't know how many people have been to as many conferences as me, but point being, I have a lot of insight into both the logistics of the conference, planning it, executing it, and then what the attendee experience is like. So I don't want to take up too much space on that front, but I guess I'm thinking about like what other people's thoughts
are. Should we just start like pitching ideas, or just curious?
Yeah. Well, John, you're kind of the expert in this room, right? You most recent. So John is one of our two co-conference chairs for the VCU University of Richmond Align conference for this year that was canceled. Rip hard.
Yeah.
So John and his co-chair Patrice put in a lot of work over the past year, and they took the very hard decision to cancel it just like 3 weeks before the conference was actually supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So actually, John, could you give us an overview of like sort of the theme of your conference, what you wanted it to be, and any sort of lessons that stood out to you across like over the past 9 months?
I think the theme probably would have been like a level of unity within the community. See, that's why we wanted to like create the torch as the logo, because we also like remade that too. There's just so much that we were kind of like looking forward to, but just being able to, because like that was also another part that we looked at that past Align experiences didn't capitalize as much on. Well, maybe on George Washington, yes, and the one before that, but UVA was more like admin, like research centered. So we wanted to bring it back to, hey, let's be able to share our stories and be able to basically create the community from that. I was thinking not only incorporating the student's voice, but if we also invited maybe teachers and staff who also had experienced their first gen narrative and be able to like have them interwoven within the student community would also be an interesting, like, not tactic, but like something that we can keep in mind, because like teachers are also people too, and I feel like a lot of the student body forgets that a lot. So especially within this crisis, so being able to kind of like, hey, like there should be like a level of catharsis when talking to students about the experience that they're having now, and they should kind of like, or the teacher should empathize with the students just as much as the students should empathize with the teachers, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's a good point. Carl, as a professor, what are your thoughts? Like, what I guess, what would you want? What sort of programming would you want to see as a professor coming into an Align conference?
So I think it's tough for faculty to navigate these spaces. I was at a session with Chris Sinclair at Real College with a panel of student activists. And there was a question from these student activists about relationships with faculty and staff. And they all kind of paused for a beat. And then one of them said, well, the staff are really helpful. And I felt very seen in that moment.
Right, right.
So I think some of it's going to be institution specific. How can staff contribute on the ground? I think some of it's going to be teaching specific. How can you make your syllabi and your materials friendly for first gen students? I'm doing a workshop on this, I guess next summer.
Oh, wow.
At the American Association of Philosophy Teachers, building on the work of Jessica Larco, who's got a great paper on class differences, like socioeconomic class, and how students of different classes will hear the same direction different ways. Stuff like, you can come to office hours if you need help, whether you hear that as an invitation or a threat.
Right.
Like, oh, I can go and get help because I've always been able to go get help, and I have this comfortable relationship talking to teachers and advisors, versus the office is where you go when you're in trouble.
Yeah, yep.
Right.
So I think there are a bunch of different pathways for teachers to get into this work, but in many cases they aren't obvious, and I think part of the challenge is going to be articulating them in a way that teachers can fit in to the work they already have to do. Traditionally, now with the rise of contingent faculty, adjunct faculty, this is changing, but traditionally the three faculty expectations are research, teaching, and service. And I think there are ways to do it in research, but I think that's more difficult. So I think connecting it to teaching or service is going to be the way to go within that model. And I think especially at conferences, if you're already on the ground at the school, there are ways to do that. I think it would have to relate back to the theme of the conference, though, like John was saying.
Yeah, yeah. Those are good points. Thanks, Carl. Joseph, I wonder what your thoughts are on what you want to see from a future Align.
Yeah, definitely. So as a big advocate for the immigrant community, I think integrating workshops or some sort of resources for undocumented students, or students in mixed families, meaning they're citizens, but their parents may be undocumented. So, and a lot of immigrant and undocumented students, they're first gen as well. So tying that in with everything, I think that'll be really helpful in next conferences. And also, like you said, inviting students from community colleges. I went to the community college as well, so I see a lot of first gen students, and there's a lot of need there. Sometimes in community colleges there isn't that many resources available, and so I think seeing that in the line conference would be really helpful.
Yeah, sure. We'll probably have over the next few months, as you're integrating into our team with me and Michaela, have a lot of conversations about from programming's perspective, what's important to address from a 2-year college point of view. So I'm gonna leave this breakout room. It's been already 10 minutes. So we'll break back in, but yeah, you guys will have about a minute left.
Hey.
Hey.
Oh, I like jumped back. Did everyone else come back?
Yeah, I think people are coming back.
Coming.
Yeah. I had a lot of good conversation. I don't know about you.
Yeah, we had good conversation too.
All right. I feel like we had so few people that we didn't even have to break out into rooms.
Probably not, but it was probably better because like if we were both having good conversation, then
True.
it would have limited conversation.
Yeah.
But we'll wait for everyone to come back.
And that's how I know my room was better, because people still wanna talk.
I didn't know we were gonna have an option. I just like immediately hit like, yo, go back.
Right.
My room is still talking too. I just abandoned them.
All right. Yeah. So thank you guys for humoring us. I want to go through some highlights. Michaela, do you want to go through highlights from your breakout room?
So Erica opened up our conversation and she talked about maybe having a workshop on non-traditional career opportunities. And I thought that was a good idea, Chris, because we in the past have had workshops on pre-med, pre-law. We had a workshop, I guess, 2 weeks ago. No, 1 week ago.
2 weeks ago.
Again, what is time? 2 weeks ago on applying to med school, but we've never really done anything else. We've never really done anything beyond pre-med, pre-law, and pre-business, unless you did something before my time. But
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Erica, what sort of non-traditional career paths did you have in mind?
Erica.
Oh.
Okay, she can only type now.
Yep.
So your house is loud. Did you hear the question Chris asked? What type of careers were you thinking for the non-traditional career session you mentioned? Academia,
Okay.
public relations.
Yeah, I think we had one session across like the 3 and 4, you know, because we made the program for VCU and U of R. So across 4 programs, I think only 1 year we talked about like grad school.
Right.
So yeah, and journalism, public relations. Yeah, we've never done that before. So yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. We also in my room we talked about different financial aid, not just financial aid, but money managing opportunities. Because Daniel was in my room, so he gave me a bunch of ideas. There was a week at Columbia pre your time, Chris, that was called Cashing In Week, and I thought that was a really great idea too, because he said that they got first gen and low income admin to share their experiences, kind of like their life journeys, and I guess kind of like their mess ups because he was saying, we have this idea that staff admin have their lives together and that they have all the answers, but they have some answers, and then they can share that with us and kind of make us feel less, I guess, disheveled. We also talked about Anthony Jack. You know who that is? The author of The Privileged Poor. Yeah. And how he might be a great keynote speaker sometime in the future.
Oh yeah, I mean, Anthony Jack's a celebrity in this space.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be a coup to get him to come as a speaker.
Yeah, I had to admit I haven't read the book. Have you read The Privileged Poor, Chris?
I haven't read it.
I haven't either. So, but everyone talks about it, and it's like literally the FGLI like Bible for staff, literally. We also talked about intersectionality and how these multiple identities that some of us have, being students of color, being low income, being first gen, being immigrants, being, queer, being whatever we are, can affect our student journeys differently in similar ways. And then Leslie brought up factuality. Has anyone heard of factuality? No, mention in the comments if you have. It's a game based on intersectionality, or that teaches about intersectionality. She said it's like her game Undocumented Limbo. And
wow.
And the website is factualitythegame.com. Correct me if I'm wrong. And the workshop host kind of goes around and plays the game with students or whoever else, and you kind of learn. It's a way to learn about intersectionality using this game and I guess real life examples. And Carl said that Tony Jack spoke at Real College 2019. He's great. Well, Tony Jack, if you see this and you you want to speak at Align, hit us up. But what went on in your room?
So I guess I want John to talk a little bit about, because so John was one of the two co-chairs for this year's Align conference, and having spent 9 of the past months working on a conference, I feel like John is very well situated to talk about lessons learned and at least give us a sense of what theme you wanted to have for this year's conference before it was sadly, tragically canceled.
So similar to what I said in the breakout room, we kind of wanted to focus more on the idea of like unity and kind of like combining and understanding the narrative between the community of both the students and maybe also interweaving faculty and staff and like teachers as well, and being able to kind of like find a level of catharsis between empathizing between both the students' experience and also the teachers' experience, and how they could kind of like create dialogue and communication between those two. I think that's a lot of what I was thinking of. The reason for this one, because like we really wanted everyone to kind of like talk about their own experience, like, and like really hone in on it. But yeah, that was that.
Yeah, John, I know you're all about the narrative. So yeah, I could have, I mean, even if I didn't know that you were working on Align, I could have pictured that as like your central thesis. So Carl had some insights from a panel that he attended at, was it Real College? Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Carl?
Sorry, struggling to unmute. Yeah, I think teachers, faculty are often absent from this space, and I would hope, not because we don't care about FGLI students, But I think often we don't know how to contribute because it's hard to fit this kind of work into the traditional three categories of research, teaching, and service that we are trained as academics to dedicate our lives to. If you're working in a field where your research can run into this stuff, I think that's fantastic. And I've got colleagues in disciplines like sociology or communication studies who have been able to do that. But for most of us, I would say, the way to that is going to be through teaching or service. So helping faculty realize there are easy things we can do that'll help. For example, paying attention to the wording on our syllabi, explaining what office hours is for people who don't know. Stuff like that can really make a difference.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so I guess yeah. So the other 2 points, I feel like everybody just had like a chance to say one thing. So we are running low on time. Joseph, do you want to say 30 seconds about
Yes,
what you said?
We just talked about integrating the undocumented and international students for the conferences and the community college students. So Chris and Claire said something important. That's the creating community at community colleges, since it's a commuter school.
Yeah. Yeah. Like how, I mean, this has probably been a conversation that's been happening for decades now, right? So yeah, that's something that we can talk about for sure.
Yeah, I know when we were going to have at least 2 community colleges, I think, at Align, including Joseph from Camden County. But that was one thing that they mentioned, was that they were excited. They wanted to stay with the students, in their dorms or in their apartments, because at their community college, they didn't have, dorms. They had to commute. So when I was asking them, like, okay, well, are you going to put them up in a hotel, or do you need volunteer lodging? They were like, oh, well, our students really want to stay with like the other students because they want to get that experience of, like real college life. Not that being in a community college isn't real college, but residential college life.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess the other thing that Joseph, you brought up was about resources in community colleges, and how it tends to be that schools with the greatest number of first and low-income students, at least proportion-wise, have fewer resources for first and low-income students on average. So yeah, we'll I guess more conversations about all of this, all that we just brought up in the coming months. But it's really good to like kick it off here. And yeah, if anybody has any thoughts or ever wants to talk to now not just Michaela and me, but also Joseph about ideas for programming, let us know. Hit us up. align.leadership@gmail.com. Yeah, okay, let's put it that as is our ritual now. So is there anything else on or left in our slide?
Go back to the slide quick.
Yeah.
So we have just our like socials, I think.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys, oh yeah, because I never put the example agenda, my bad. But so hopefully you guys follow us on our socials already. We have our Facebook page, we have our Twitter, kind of have our Instagram. I dropped the ball on that. Hopefully Joseph picks it up. And we have our YouTube too, which we like never used until post Align 2019 and are now resurrecting. So you can connect with us on there. And depending on which platform you use, we do post different stuff on each one. So follow us on all of them. Make sure you're not missing out.
That's right. All right.
Oh, and like we said, if you want to join our team, we don't have a Snapchat. No, I'm sorry. I can barely do the Instagram, so no Snapchat. But if you want to join our team, if you want to run our Snapchat for us, then hit us up, align.leadership@gmail.com, or any of our social platforms. You can just send us a message, and I promise we'll get back to you.
All right.
Oh, and bid application. Chris?
Oh, yes.
So every year, this is about the time where we put out a bid application for people who want to apply to host the conference. It's really easy to fill out, but the one major thing that we ask before you fill it out is that you talk to people at your school, do some preliminary research, some preliminary conversations. We ask that you have 2 co-directors to apply, 2 student co-directors that are willing to take on this burden/opportunity of hosting the conference at their school. And basically the co-directors will be our points of contact. You'll work with Chris and I. And we also ask that you have at least 1 advisor that is willing to help you out. And the caveat is we don't want them to have too much control over the conference. We want this to be a student-centered conference, and we want it to be something that the students are promoting and proud of. But we also know that students cannot do everything on their own. They shouldn't be expected to do everything on their own, and that they'll need help. So if this sounds like your students, please share the bid application. Please fill out the bid application. Chris just shared it in the chat. It will also be on our website within the next couple days. And it's due the 9th of June.
It's due mid-June.
Mid-June. Yeah. So yeah, please reach out to us if you have any questions. And thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, does anybody have any more questions or thoughts before we part ways?
We should take a picture.
Oh yeah, you take that picture.
How do I do it? Yeah, you might as well just.
It's Apple Shift 4.
All right, everyone, get ready.
Done. I did it. I Apple Shift 4. I didn't even.
Let me get my picture ready.
I didn't even use the built-in function.
That's what I was asking. I don't know how to do it.
Oh my God. Okay. All right. Hold on. Hold that dinosaur up again, Daniel. Oh my God. There's so many of them.
I gotta scroll.
All right. There we go. I took it. Yeah, bid application on the chat, also on our website. Double down. If you are interested in applying, we want to talk to you about hosting a conference at the very least, and spread to your networks as well. So, all right, cool. Thank you guys for joining us for yet another Align Online session. It's the weekend. You want to do other things, so we appreciate your time very, very much. Sunday we will have another session. This will be a more informal discussion among students, targeting students about mental health and the intersection between mental health and first and low income identities, and also being a student of color. So that will be Sunday. So tomorrow afternoon, and we're winding down. Align Online is almost done. So thank you for being on this journey with us as we experiment and keep messing up and learn and have fun. So that said, everybody take care, stay healthy, and thanks again. All right, bye.
Bye.